A big name at quarterback has just officially become available. Are the Miami Hurricanes going to make a move?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Consider this a breaking news episode because reports have just surfaced. Carson Beck, former Georgia Bulldogs starting quarterback, Carson Beck is entering the transfer portal. Now, Beck had previously, kind of like Cam Ward did a year ago, he had declared for the NFL draft, but as we discussed this morning on a new episode of Locked On Canes, and by the way, the timing for this news couldn't be any crazier because we just had a conversation about Beck, Quinn Ewers, and others this morning. As we discussed, even though Beck had verbally, online declared for the NFL draft, he had until January 15th to fully make his decision. That was the drop dead date. So Carson Beck is opting out of the NFL draft with 1 year of eligibility remaining. And the fact that he's entering the transfer portal means he's probably not staying at Georgia unless, Georgia is really desperate and they negotiate with him, whatever. But if he wanted to stay at Georgia, he probably would have announced he was staying at Georgia. He's hitting the transfer portal. Already there are links coming out for Miami. Pete Thamel, who's a pretty well-connected reporter at ESPN, said, per an ESPN source, Miami looms as the favorite to land Carson Beck. A couple more details on Carson Beck, Thamel wrote on his X account. The timeline for a choice is within a week. So Beck wants to get this done relatively quickly, whether it's Miami or somewhere else. Because, again, Pete Thamel may say Miami's the favorite. That doesn't mean it's automatically a Miami lock, okay? He says Beck will not be able to throw until March, and he's expected to miss spring practice. He'll be good to go, though, well before summer camp after elbow surgery. So Beck, we've talked about this on Locked On Canes. He, of course, as you guys know, if you watch the SEC championship game, as most of you did, he injured his throwing elbow. He has since had UCL surgery on it, similar procedure to one that Brock Purdy of the 49ers has had, and he recovered relatively quickly from that. But I was kind of wondering about that because some reports right after the Beck surgery had claimed he might be ready to be full go by spring. But according to the Thamel report, Carson Beck would have to miss spring football. So that would be, not ideal for wherever he lands up. Not necessarily a deal breaker, though, right? Because I don't know if any school who's needing a quarterback is going to look and say, well, if you can't throw till the summer, we don't want you. I think in the case of Miami, they have clearly been looking for an upgrade at the quarterback position. Thamel added, while Miami looms as the favorite for Beck, a source said that Beck's camp intends to listen to all potential suitors for the best situation. Quote, it's a strategic thing, not an emotional thing, the source said. Now, I think it's safe to say Carson Beck's emotions, though, will probably lead him to Coral Gables. That's why he's keeping an open mind here, because if you go strictly based on emotion, as we've talked about, his girlfriend, his significant other, is Hannah Cavender. Plays for the Miami Hurricanes basketball team. Now, she is in her final year of eligibility for the Hoops team. So she, would not still be playing, next year when Beck would be theoretically playing for Miami. But, she, of course, would be around for the upcoming semester. And she will, I imagine, probably still live in Miami after she's done playing basketball for the women's team. So Carson Beck's emotions would probably take him towards the Miami Hurricanes. And, my thoughts on Carson Beck, I love his experience. You're talking about a player who has performed in some of the biggest games you could possibly play, big stages in the SEC. Miami's current quarterback room with Emory Williams heading into his third season and limited actual playing time out there. He's made 2 starts and a few appearances in relief. Judd Anderson heading into his second year with no collegiate experience yet. and Luke Nichol coming in as a true freshman, obviously with no collegiate experience yet, having somebody who fits that profile of a Carson Beck with 1 year of eligibility remaining could be a really good bridge quarterback, potentially bridging that gap to, the guy that I would think, just based on the pedigree he's coming in with, who'd probably be the most ready to be Miami's starter in 2026 would be Luke Nichol, who's going to be a true freshman in 2025. That's a tough situation to be in. I believe in Luke, but starting a true freshman, it's risky. Having someone like Carson Beck to bridge that gap could really be a beneficial thing for the Miami Hurricanes. Now, if Carson Beck ends up at Miami, don't expect Cam Ward 2.0 because Ward is one of one. But in the case of Beck, he has an opportunity, and it's why he's decided to play one final year of college ball. He has an opportunity to raise his draft stock the way Cam Ward just did. So Ward a year ago was getting back day 3, maybe 4th round NFL draft grades. Took a gamble on himself, played a final year of college ball at Miami, put up ridiculous numbers, and had obviously the defense let him down, but Cam Ward had a tremendous year here, and now he's being talked about as the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming draft. If you are a big-name quarterback and you're getting a 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round draft grade, and you can have that opportunity to make likely a 7-figure NIL deal somewhere to play one final year of college while you raise your draft stock, potentially from the 4th round to the 1st round, the way that Cam Ward did, that ends up being a gamble that is potentially worth taking. This is not in the pre-NIL era where you're theoretically not making money to play college football. Something like this would be an unconscionable decision to make. But in the case of Carson Beck, he can 100% benefit from this. Now, Miami is in an interesting spot here, okay? Because, I think that another quarterback who may or may not become available in the upcoming days, who I think the Hurricanes could very well be interested in, would be Quinn Ewers. There's no guarantee, though, what Ewers is going to decide to do. I don't think he's got a spot on the Texas Longhorns next year because they're ready to start the Arch Manning era officially, but Ewers could decide to go pro. We're going to see how the next 2 playoff games go for him. If Ewers lights it up against Ohio State and wins the semifinal and wins a national championship, suddenly he might start getting the 1st round draft grades that he may not be getting at this point. But, if we can sit here and say, hey, you know what, if it's between Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck, maybe Ewers is the guy that we like. If you were to wait for him to maybe or maybe not become available, that is a gamble that may not be worth taking, especially when Carson Beck has set a week-long timetable to find his next school. So I would say the next 24 hours or so are going to be really telling. Do we hear about Miami potentially setting up a visit with Beck? Do the reports of mutual interest, like David Lake at InsideTheU.com has already reported mutual interest between Miami and Beck. Do those reports intensify? If they don't intensify, then maybe that means Miami is holding out for something or someone else. If those reports do intensify, and I'm talking to you less than an hour after Beck announced he was hitting the transfer portal, we're already seeing these reports linking him to Miami intensifying. But if they don't, that might mean Miami is looking in a different direction. Well, let's talk a little bit more about Carson Beck, who is now officially in the transfer portal. Pete Thamel of ESPN reports Miami to be in pole position here. A couple of other notes from Miami. There is an assistant coach who's leaving the Hurricane staff, and Miami has been crystal balled to land a certain player with a very familiar last name in the transfer portal. You want to keep it locked right here, friends. We're nowhere near done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, has Rocket Money helped you find any subscriptions you forgot about, or maybe you were paying for them twice? That's happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, I love the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore. It's already saved me a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my family's future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Carson Beck had declared for the NFL draft. He has walked that back today, Thursday afternoon, and the former Georgia Bulldogs starting quarterback is going to be entering the transfer portal. And I feel Georgia fans have very mixed feelings on that because they got to look at Gunnar Stockton in the CFP and they didn't really like what they saw. So they were talking up Stockton. Seems like some Georgia fans are hoping that Beck will stay there, but that doesn't look to be the case because if he was going to stay there, why did he hit the transfer portal? A lot of reports are linking Carson Beck to Miami. We know Miami wants to upgrade their quarterback situation. Beck is looking for a new home. Obviously, every season, every situation, every supporting cast is different. He would not be playing with the same players that Cam Ward played here, but we saw Cam Ward at Miami raise his draft stock. He certainly would have a great offensive line in front of him. If Carson Beck were to decide Miami is the spot for him, he's going to have a very clean jersey next year, that's for sure. So within the past couple of years at Georgia, his efficiency and his numbers did take a little bit of a step back in 2024 compared to 2023. He had better offensive talent, including Brock Bowers in 23 than he did in 24, which I think has something to do with that. But Carson Beck this year at UGA completed just under 65% of his throws, 3,485 yards, 28 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. So the interception numbers were bigger than we want them to be. He had just 6 interceptions in 23, 12 interceptions in 2024. But that's what we're looking at here. And he didn't again was not surrounded with the best offensive talent. I mean, how many dropped passes did his receivers have this year at UGA? Again, this is not a perfect. Miami had an almost perfect quarterback this year in Cam Ward. I'm not saying Carson Beck is that, but theoretically, he's an upgrade over what Miami has in the room right now. His experience is unquestioned, and his maturity, both physical and mental maturity. The reservation we would have is the fact that he's recovering from an injury to his throwing arm and will probably not be able to be a full participant in spring football because of that. So if he were to come to Miami, we would essentially see a battle of the backups in spring football with, Luke Nichol, who we're excited to watch in spring. He's enrolling. He's probably just enrolled or just arrived at Miami. He's probably moving in because classes are starting on Monday, or maybe he's moving in this weekend as a true freshman off of 2 straight state championships in Georgia. Judd Anderson and Emory Williams will get a good look at them in the spring. And if Miami were to add Carson Beck, he would be more of a spectator during spring football, would probably be able to do some light workouts, but will not be fully recovered from that elbow injury. So again, we'll have to see what happens here because Miami could potentially have other options, but if your other option is waiting for someone like Quinn Ewers after his CFP run is done, I wonder if that would be too risky. You may have to make a move now on Beck if he's given you a 1-week timeline to decide his next spot. And yeah, there are reports out there that Miami is in pole position for him. I want to send out a huge thank you and a happy trails to Miami defensive line coach Joe Salovea. Salovea, I've enjoyed his company anytime I've been around him at Miami practices and had a chance to talk with Big Joe. Just an unbelievably great guy. He is leaving, according to Pete Thamel. We're getting a lot of information from Pete today. I've seen others reporting this as well. Joe Salovea, who is he works with Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor is still at Miami, but the other defensive line coach, Joe Salovea, Big Joe, is leaving Miami to become the new defensive line coach at Arizona. So he's going back out west. So we want to wish the best to Big Joe. This just means, more staff changes coming to Miami. Now, you have to wonder, are we going to do 2 defensive line coaches again? Jason Taylor obviously works more with the edge rushers. Big Joe is working more with the defensive tackles. Are they going to give more responsibility to Jason Taylor and maybe getting like an extra coach for the secondary? Or will Miami bring in another defensive tackles coach? Of course, we still don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be. So ideally, you would like to hire your defensive coordinator first and let him fill the extra voids that are left by the staff. So hopefully Miami's next DC would be the one that hires Joe Salovea's replacement, because you'd like your DC to be able to bring in at least some of his own guys. But happy trails to Joe Salovea. In terms of the transfer portal, the hot situation, of course, we're going to be monitoring in the coming days will be Carson Beck, who, whether it's Miami or somewhere else, is going to make up his mind within the next week. I did notice today, though, my guy Gabby Urrutia at Inside the U logged a crystal ball from Miami to land UAB tight end Jack Nichol. Does that name sound familiar? Not Jack Nicholson. Jack Nichol, who is the older brother of Luke Nichol, Miami Hurricanes quarterback signee. His brother is a tight end, seems to be primarily a blocking tight end at UAB, hitting the transfer portal. And, we can get the family together, the Milton parents, if, this is not a done deal yet, but if Jack brings his talents to Miami, it'd be pretty cool. The Nichol parents would only have to travel to one place on the weekends to see both of their sons play. And, I would imagine Jack would love to block and protect his younger brother, Luke, at Miami. So that would be cool if that Nichol family reunion happens down here. And the Nichol family seems awesome. Of course, we've had Luke Nichol on the show a handful of times. I've met his father, who seems like a really nice guy. And honestly, I respect when you're the parent of a high-level athlete like that. I have so much respect. As the father of a hyperactive 6-year-old, like, I see the sort of nurturing and discipline and guidance that parents have to put in, for their sons and daughters to reach these, great achievements, whether it be academically or athletically. So, I mean, that's the sign of great parenting right there. So much respect. And if we could save the Nichol family some trips, fewer trips to Birmingham and more trips to South Florida, I think that would be a good thing. Thank you, everyone, so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure to smash that like button, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Canes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you get your pods. And we will talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.